Alright, so I'm going to do a quick little how-to on how to use the path tool. You know, this is kind of one of those things that I take for granted just because I've been doing this for a while. But real quick, so if you go in and you take the path tool, and like I had said before, there's a couple different ways you can use it. You can click point to point to point, right, and that'll make straight lines. So I'm going to go Control Z. Or you can do, if you click and drag, it'll make these tails. And then if you were to make another point, it'll make a curve. If I had this and I made another point and clicked and dragged, I can make I can create a curve any which way I want to go. You can come back and you can edit these and you can change them by moving the tail around. But notice how the other tail doesn't move, this one over here. So what you can do is hold Shift and it'll mirror on either side. That way when you do this and you're like, okay, this is exactly where I want it to go, and then I need to make another point over here, it'll make that transition across this point really, really smooth. And then I got this. And if I came back and I made let's say make another point. If I needed to edit this, I can change the length, I could do whatever I need to do. I could even try to keep it as straight as possible and don't hold Shift, and you can elongate one out and it'll make it a little bit more complex. But then it comes down to what can you do with the path itself. And there's three quick things that you can do here. Make sure that polygonal is turned off, make sure that that's turned off, because if you leave that on, it won't make, it'll just go point to point and it won't do any curves. You can do selection from path, so it'll take this shape and it'll select that area. So sometimes it's good if you need to select, around certain different things and get between things. You can do that as a selection, or you could do it as fill path, and now you have your color. You can fill the path and it'll fill it with that color. And notice how it, it'll cut straight through, so it'll go end to end. So you have to join the ends. Or you can stroke, and you make your line width whatever much you want. If I wanted it 17, it's a fat line. If I wanted it, 5, it's a skinnier line. You do whatever you want with that. You can also do stroke with a paint tool, which is neat because if you have your paintbrush, and notice how the path went away, so I'll show you that in a moment. So say I had my paintbrush here and I was like, well, I want this soft, I want that kind of hardness to it, but I want it a little bit thinner. I want it like this. So if I come back to my path, and I'll show you how to find the paths here, go to your paths, see this one was unnamed. It'll keep record of all the paths you make. So you just have to, toggle the visibility, and then you can click on the path, brings it back. So you can do stroke, and you can do stroke with paint tool, and it'll do that. So sometimes that's good for uneven lines, stuff like that. The other thing you can do, and I'll show you this because it took me a while to figure out for whatever reason. I didn't really have anyone teaching me how to do this. Kind of did this all self-taught. So say I made this shape and I'm like, well, I want it to fill this area, and you're like, oh yeah, that's good because it filled end to end. But you actually want it to connect. Hold Control. So sometimes you might have to bring this tail back. You might have to bring that tail back because it's going to overlap. But hold Control and then click, and it'll link them together. Now, if this tail was messed up, those two tails are going to conflict, and it'll make that wonky edge. So you want to make it so it kind of smooth transitions between the two. Usually you leave a space between where the tails would end, and it'll kind of smooth itself. So complex shapes are pretty easy. Alright, so hopefully that's helpful. There's a lot of other things you can do with Path Tool, but that's really the basics to it. And you get the hang of it. The more you do stuff, the more you get used to it, the more sense it'll make to you. So, alright, any questions, let me know. Usually pretty able to be contacted, reached out to. Alright, thanks, bye.